Hey, welcome to TJ's Highland Steakhouse here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We're here with the first edition, number one podcast of the Rich and Ron Show. We're going to be talking about food, fun, and football all day long, all night long. We're going to have a great time. Come by TJ's Highland Steakhouse. See you soon. Welcome, guests, friends, family. Thank you for coming out. We got a great show. It's an inaugural show. It's called the Rich and Ron Show. And I don't know how this ever came about, but I think it was Rich eating 3 pints of Haagen-Dazs and me having a couple bottles of wine at my house. I think that's how this whole thing came together. But we're
Actually,
here in the
Vito,
beautiful
can I interrupt you
18th
already?
green.
Vito?
Yeah, what's up?
Can I interrupt you?
You could interrupt.
I think it started at the barbecue in college in 1984, before my senior year is where we met, right?
Well, that's going back in history, but yeah, that's exactly right. It was the year before you got drafted, and
Yeah.
I tried to get 2 hamburger patties on a barbecue grill. And I opened up grill 1, full of chicken. Grill 2, burgers and dogs. Grill 3, steaks. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes around the corner and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to drop down some food. I got 2 patties, me and my wife." He goes, "Well, you just got to wait." He treated me like a bear. Yeah, I said, "What's going on here? You have something against guys from New York?" And after that, it was a friendship that spawned from 80s all the way till now.
Yep.
Well, anyway, I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves and get caught up. They actually are getting caught up. They'll tell you a lot about what they're doing. They're great people. And I met Ron today for the first time. We had lunch. I spoke to him on the phone, but Rich and Ron are close friends and teammates. So let's get this great podcast started, and thanks for coming out. How's the food? How's the drink? If Rich, what about the lulls? What and you, Ron? What's this lulls story? No lulls.
That's Rich's story. Rich was when we went on road trips. Well, let me back it up. Rich was drafted. I was in Green Bay 2 or 3 years before he got there. Rich got drafted, and for some reason, his locker ended up right next to mine. Now, we're exact opposites. I like things nice and neat and clean, and you can tell by Rich's helmet here that he doesn't care. And so that's basically how our friendship started. And
I don't think they had the diagnosis for a 6'5", 340 pounds of twisted steel OCD at the time.
6'6", Rich. I know that
6'6".
when you're under 6 foot, it's kind of tough on you. But
That is true story. Yep. Ron is very immaculate, but we hit it off, and so we're glad to be here. I just want to superficially introduce Ronnie. He's been living in Minocqua for probably the last 24 years, and I got a chance to go up there a couple of years ago. And when you're playing, you didn't get a lot of days off. So when I went up there a couple of years ago, I was amazed at how beautiful it was up there. The lakes, and Ron had started a very successful skidoo and snowmobile business, which the first snowmobile I ever went with was in '85 with him. And he recently sold it. And he's got 2 lovely daughters, went to college, one went to St. Norberg's, and he's on his way to Sturgis in a couple days. Likes motorcycles, and it's just fortunate to be here, and I appreciate everybody coming out. That's kind of a Reader's Digest on Ronnie.
Rich just jammed me into that whole 5 minutes of speech there.
Yeah.
So Rich is correct. I've been up in Minocqua for 24 years. Was living in Illinois, our favorite state to be from, I guess. It's funny, up in Minocqua, probably 90% of the people that are up there are from Illinois. So it was a nice place to be able to get away because they didn't care about the Packers. You know, they're all Bear fans up there. And half the people that own businesses up there are from Illinois. So there's not as big a following as the Packer loyals in the rest of the state. But that's true in a lot of these resort areas in northern Wisconsin. But we got to wait for the planes to come over. We got to give them their time. It's the air show. It's Oshkosh. I've been there. I know when you live here, it's tough, but you know, I went there as a fan and loved it. So, so I learned how to love Wisconsin. And when I got drafted, I was drafted by Bart Starr. When I got drafted, I came here and I never left. So I've been here a long time, and Illinois is just a state where my relatives live.
And, you know, Ron was, he was with the Packers for 12 years. He was drafted, and we'll touch base a little bit, and he can give you a little bit of input on playing for Bart Starr. So he played for Bart Starr and Forrest. And actually, I have a little history with Bart Starr. I didn't make it to the Ice Bowl, like I said earlier. But this happens to be kind of a personal photograph, hold that up for a minute, of my late father, who was Ron's size, about, 6'6" and strong as an acre of garlic. And this is actually people, when Jerry Kramer was put into the Hall of Fame, people would ask me about it, and I always say, well, the reason why it took him so long is because my late father was beating him for a sack on Bart Starr here. And it's kind of interesting because I actually have a nice photo of pulling for Brett Favre up here when he had his first start. And it was September 27th, 92.
Yep.
So that's a little bit of it. So Ron can touch base if you have questions and or superficial. Maybe you can talk right now a little bit about, because they both are actually in heaven right now, Bart Starr and Forrest. And maybe you can touch base on, the viewers might want to hear a little bit about playing for Bart Starr and Forrest.
The great thing with it's funny when Rich said that someone here thought he might have played in the Ice Bowl. I've been asked before if I played for Lombardi. Of course, my quip is always that no, I was drafted by Bart Starr. So that kind of cuts it right there. I did get the chance to be coached by one of the Lombardi area, actually two. But Bart drafted me in 1982 in the first round. He was there, great coach. He was at the longer end of his tenure there. I think he had 9 years in Green Bay at the time. And today, I mean, anyone that watches football today knows 9 years is unheard of if you're not successful. The sad thing with Bart was he was ready in the last 2 or 3 years of his coaching career to really make something happen in the NFL. He needed a few more players. But the team was ready to move on. Great coach, great player, can't say enough about him.
Knew how to draft too, huh, Ron?
That's right. To be drafted by him is just something I'll be able to love and cherish the rest of my life. And I went from him to Forrest Gregg. So that was a night and day type scenario. Forrest was Forrest was the kind of guy, if he could throw you down, beat you up, and humiliate you in front of the team, once he did that, you were one of his better players. And that happened to me. I don't know. I don't think you were there.
But to piggyback on what Ron said is there was this guy named Scott, the guy who played at Santa Clara. Scott, he was a D3 guy, and he made the roster. And I remember him coming up to me my rookie year, and he goes, "Hey, with Forrest, all you have to do is get in a fight. If you get in a couple fights, you'll make the team." He goes, "That's what I did." And Forrest loved that. He loved the Oklahoma drill. He liked that fight, and he didn't really matter if you couldn't play. If you could do good in the Oklahoma drill. So it piggybacks on that. But he he was still a good guy, and he,
He's obviously his tenure. You look at where he coached and what he did. He was a great coach, but the league was changing back then. A lot of people don't understand that everything was starting to change in the league. If you go back to those early in the mid to late '80s, the things the 49ers were doing, the West Coast offense was coming in, and the league was changing. And Green Bay wasn't changing with it at the time, unfortunately. Draft-wise, they were starting to do some different things, but offensively, they just weren't changing fast enough. And part of that, I don't really blame so much on the coaches, but a lot of it was the mentality within the organization itself. And we went from that, then we went into Lindy and Fonte, where we had a little success in 1989. Things were looking like we were going to start to change. He had a high-flying offense, and things were starting to look better. But again, Lindy had a one and done, and then he had 2 years of nothing, and then we come to the Mike Holmgren era, and I always tell people, how long did you play? I said, well, I started with Lynn Dickey. Anyone that knows Lynn Dickey, okay? I started with Lynn Dickey, and my last year in Green Bay was with Brett Favre, and I had everything in between. So,
when he talked about blame in a minute, how many people watched the '98 Super Bowl in San Diego? But in a minute, we're going to put the blame on Vito on that loss, but there's a little bit of a story behind. Ronnie talked about everything between. So I get done with the Packers in '94, a year after Ronnie, and sure enough, it's like that breakup with some girl you really care about, I guess, and you loved her, but it ended, and that's what happened with Green Bay. They end up going to the Super Bowls, not just New Orleans, but they end up in my backyard in San Diego. So I was still real good friends with Brett and Frank Winters. So the gentleman came to town, and they wanted a few adult beverages. And so Vito had run a couple of different places in San Diego. That's how he ended up getting into this business also. He was in the wine business, and he rolled into the restaurant business. And he, in downtown Fifth Street, we had a restaurant bar called Tupelo's where he worked. And so the guys wanted to go to a place to go have some fun prior to Super Bowl starting. And next thing you know, you had a few of the guys there that kind of had the back in the day personality, Frank Winters and Bag of Donuts, right? And they like to have fun but still play football. And so there was allegations that some of the guys got overserved and they might have been dehydrated. And if that happened, it was because of Vito. So,
Rich, I was under your instructions to provide the finest food and beverage to Brett and the O-line.
that is true.
Vito, I'm not happy with that at all because, as players, we don't get a choice on, everyone thinks that you get free tickets and all this to go to all this stuff. I had to buy my Super Bowl tickets off the internet, okay? And I think at that time I paid way too much. I was taking my ex-father-in-law to the game and a couple friends, and we were staying in Vegas. And I bought the tickets in Vegas, and they told me they were great seats, okay? And I paid a lot of money for them. So I get to the game, and the ushers showing me, and Rich knows this at that stadium in San Diego. The seats ended up being in the end zone, in the top row of the end zone. And in the top row of the end zone, I don't even think it's still there, is it? Because it's a baseball stadium. You can't see the 15-yard line in, you can't see anything. So the only fun I had at that whole game was high-fiving the guy in the U-2 that flew over before the game. So thanks a lot for making it even more miserable.
But the food was incredible, and there's a little bit of a story of how Rich and Ron ended up coming here for the inaugural show, but more importantly to eat. When we played at Green Bay, we had like 3 restaurants, okay? You had Red Lobster, you had a Chinese restaurant, and
Mandarin.
you had Victoria's, but it wasn't close. You had to go way up to Appleton. So we like to eat. So what would happen is, for some reason, I was nominated. Every road game we would go on, you would get in. People don't realize on a road game, you leave practice on Saturday, and then you would actually fly out, get into the town at 3:30 or 4, and then you go up to your racer room, say hello to family and friends, but you want to get carved up and fueled up for the meal. And so
And you had a meeting at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if you weren't at the meeting at 9 o'clock, you were fined and usually didn't play that game.
And I did all the homework for the restaurants, okay, to go to. And so I had a lot of pressure on me because I've got 10 guys. Got Big Ronnie, okay, and we'll get into his weigh-in he had early in the week, okay. So you had that, and you had all the players, and so then we would get in our cabs, race over to the restaurant, and one of the things that Ronnie would say to the waitress, because he's very soft-spoken, nice guy, but he's still big and intimidating, right? And he would tell the waiter and waitresses, we want no lulls. What do you mean? Keep it coming. Keep the appetizers coming. No lulls. Keep it coming. Boom. So
When you got 10 guys there and you got to get them fed and you got to go to the meeting, because if you're not at the meeting, one, you'll be humiliated, you'll be fined, everything. It's not worth it in the league. So we'd go in there and just we'd tell the waiters that this has to be quick, it has to be professional, and you've got guys that are hungry, so no lulls. We want food coming.
And it was either a thumbs up or thumbs down. So Ron hasn't eaten here yet. I did last night. So
we'll give you the thumbs up and thumbs down after we try some food. So.
And there's a couple things. Actually, I was going to pass these out that will roll in. Can you pass these out to a couple of the tables? On here is since we are kind of rolling into training camp happened today. For years we would report. Here you go.
We're gonna show you what our schedule was like for training camp. Rich still has these. I have I don't have anything. I burned it all. When I 12 years I had enough. I put it all in a fire and sent it down the road.
So what you'll see in there, and you'll see on page 4, which we'll roll into a little bit, you have the weights, weigh-ins and stuff, but we're going to superficially talk about kind of the change in the game between when we played and there, but kind of give you an idea, because I think the following of football here is different than like in San Diego. So what I did is I just counted from Playbook our 1991 training camp schedule for you to view and look at and see that we had double days. And when you reported the double days, back then you'd have 2 practices. And so the first 2 pages show you the calendar of, practice 1, practice 2, and the players now only have 1 practice now. Yeah. So there's a lot less hitting.
We actually practice twice a day.
Yeah.
In full pads.
And so it was a race for me. I'd lose 10 pounds twice a day, and it was a race to recovery, because if you and I would we'd have our meet at St. Norbert's, get in my car, race over to a little restaurant over there. I get my 8-10 egg whites, and boom, have my pancakes or whatever to keep the weight on. Because if you start now I try not to eat 2 dinners, okay? But that kind of gives you an idea of what goes on. And then there was actually I think it's page 4, there was actually a thing on there about weigh-ins. So what was kind of unique about Ron is
I was big.
Yeah, he was a 20-pound baby when he was born.
Yeah.
And
with different coaches, I had different weight limits, I guess. I don't know. Some coaches wanted big guys. Some coaches wanted small guys. Obviously, when they drafted Rich, they wanted a small guy.
Yep.
But
he had 320. Let's go over that, Ron.
I just had, I think, when I first got to Green Bay, I came out of Iowa, I weighed 305 pounds playing guard. And which is the first era of the big offensive lineman that was coming out. I mean, offensive linemen before that were all deemed to be, 240 to 260 pounds, and that was it. When I came out, if you go back to that era, there's about probably 10 of us that were drafted that year that were all big guys that could run, basically is what it was. And when I got to Green Bay, the biggest guy they had was Greg Cook. He weighed 260 pounds. He was 6'4". So they didn't know what to do with me. they drafted me, but didn't know what to do with me. Boy, that sounded just like a good organization, didn't it?
So we
But that-
thought. Go ahead. I apologize.
That was part of that was actually part of the problem with the organization at the time. But so what they did is they put me on a diet and got me down to 280 pounds. And
280.
yeah, and so my first year I was I went
See,
from
that's
305 down to 280, and then they bounced me around from guard to tackle.
It's 25 pounds. That's like throwing a launcher off the Titanic.
Yeah, exactly. There's no splash. So, so I went through that my first year, and then the second year they thought, well, maybe, because they were starting to pick up that the linemen were getting bigger and they were more athletic. I guess I don't know, and so I slowly went up to 290, and I think my last year in Green Bay I was playing about 295. Bart's last year in Green Bay, I was playing about 295, and when Forrest Gregg came in, he wanted everybody at 315, 320. So I slowly started creeping up, and then Rich got there, and now we went back to the small lineman again. So, but
I'd actually weigh in sometime with the 5-pound weight.
yeah, but my
Literally.
last year in Green Bay under Holmgren, my weight limit was 330. So I played my last year at around 330. But but what Rich was getting to was the point on weigh-in. Weigh-in was sometimes a little brutal for me, because
What would you do the night before weigh-in, Ronnie?
Rich, you know exactly what I did. So it wasn't a doctor prescription at all.
Yeah.
It was,
But it was a sauna on Friday morning, so his weigh-in was like 320, but $50 a pound.
it was $50 a pound per day.
So that's Friday morning, but we would then go to dinner on Saturday to a nice town if it was a away game. And so one of Ron's vices is he loves desserts. And you're going to see today they've made a special treat, pastry.
He's trying to make it
Sam
sound like I'm the only one in the world that likes desserts. Now,
Yeah.
I'm sure if we ask for a hand count here,
Yeah, well, we have somebody who's special that made a special one for Ron tonight. But we kind of wanted to dovetail into the start of the season. What's kind of interesting is we were able to come in here, and usually you fly into Chicago, and start training camp. And coincidentally, we're in here today's, I think, the first day of training camp for the Packers. So, it kind of brings you into the 2019 season and what's going to go on. I think we're going to spend a couple minutes on talking about training camp a little bit, what goes on, and then, what's looking for the 19 season.
yeah, needless to say, with the paperwork that we sent out to you, what they do today is nothing like what we went through. And that's, I guess that's a great achievement for us to be able to survive that. There's been so many guys that went through those training camps and just, it was brutal. And, we have the benefit that Rich was an agent actually in the NFL, and he knows exactly what they're allowed to do now as far as training camps go.
Yeah, you have exactly, like during the season, you have 14 padded practices over a 17-game season. You got to have 11 of them by week 14. So usually Thursday's the only really padded practice, and so there's a lot of speculation out there also now about whether to have a 20-game season, an 18-game versus, that. And some of the discussion is, the union, whether you know it or not, the union is usually represents the union members. Okay, so what do you think helps take a union member's job? A young guy who's underpaid, and he gets a bunch of reps, and he gets the play, versus having less preseason games, and then taking that veteran, and say the veteran's making $100,000 a game. So 16 games gets $1.6 million. So some of the discussion now is extending the season to 18 games, giving that veteran a $100,000 pay raise for each game, and then guess what? Cut the preseason down to 2, and really, the young rookies don't have a good as chance to come and take their jobs. So
Yeah, there's a real quandary right now what to do in the NFL.
Vito, I just got the signal. I'd like to take a little break. Is that right, Vito?
How about we just get a couple comments on 2019 Packers training camp, your predictions, O-line, LaFleur,
Okay.
and then we'll segue into a break.
My predictions are very biased. Okay, they're based on the O-line. So I look at the Packers, I've looked at a little bit of history, and I look at, you had Jerry Kramer, you had Fuzzy Thurston, right? Then you had these guys that were even better than them named Hallstrom and Moran, okay? Now,
Just
obviously,
ask us.
Just kidding. However, who took over after us was a guy named Aaron Taylor and Adam Timmerman. And then you had Frank Winters, and you had Flanagan. Okay, then after those guys, you had Marco Rivera, and you had Wall. These guys are very good players. Then all of a sudden you had TJ Lang, and then you also had Sutton. Okay, so what happens when you have interior linemen, you create what's called depth in the pocket. So it's like your cup at your table. Your cup, the linemen have the top of the cup to keep the depth, and the tackles the width. So last year there's a lot of movement, I think, in their guards. We need dominant play by, I think, their guards, and then run the ball a little bit more with Rodgers under center, because what happens is it changes the reads and the dynamics for the defense. So I think if the guards produce, because Lindsey's good, the tackles are good, if we can get really good production there and we run a little bit more, I think we can be productive and have a good season. But I'm putting it on 2, but I'm kind of biased toward, but that's kind of the inside that where I think an offense starts is your inside 3.
And I'll give you the sad part about it. Mike Daniels, who went to the University of Iowa, I know that's a tough thing here in Wisconsin, but I'm an Iowa guy. So, and I'm a Badger fan until they play the Hawkeyes. So, I was kind of surprised they released him day before training camp. I thought he was a great player. Obviously, he's had some injury problems. But that's the way the league is now. I think his salary caught up with him. You know, I mean, he had redone his contract a few years back. He had some good guaranteed money, and you can see what happens in that now. If you're not producing and you got younger guys in there, you know, you're going to get moved on. You know, you're going to get moved on. So you look at what they did in the offseason. They brought in some pretty good defensive replacements. I thought they had a great draft, speculative draft. You got a couple guys that they drafted in the first round, second round that can be either a home run or a strikeout. But you know, obviously it's that time of year. Football season's around the corner. We're all Packer fans, and we're all optimistic. We're going to the Super Bowl. So.
Did you want to break, Vito, or? Okay, I guess have a little break here. And
we'll take a little break. Anyone wants to get up, get a little break, move around a little bit, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
We're going to resume this podcast. We got some food out here. That's good.
What I want to do is last night I got in. I was able to taste the food and eat here for the first time. And I wanted to introduce Mike, the chef, and tell you a little bit about him and let him talk about his team. But I've known Vito, like I said, for a long time. So when they started on the venture of the restaurant, I remember going over to his house and he was stressing. He was, you know, trying to get together, get a chef, and he had a lot of candidates. It's all right. That's actually how loud it was when Vito.
That's my brother.
That's actually how loud it was when Vito didn't have a good candidate, and he was a little frustrated because he wanted. It's ever since I've known him, it's been about family, friends, and memories when you go to his restaurant, okay? And I can remember him lighting up like a firework when he told me he had this candidate here, and he ended up settling. And so Mike is from Philly, been a chef in New York for years, and didn't even have a car. So he came out here, interviewed, and I just want him to introduce some of his dishes. One of my favorite dishes is this bacon dish right here. It's an appetizer that just blows me away. But anyway, I'm going to introduce Mike here for a minute and talk to you, and he'll tell you about his team, and we'll just kind of go from there. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, boy. Go Birds. Anyway, so welcome everybody. Most of you we've seen before, but I came from New York. Vito impressed me pretty well with and TJ with what they wanted to do here. I was trying to get out of New York, and it was time for me to go, and this was the perfect opportunity. Just me and my dog, so we were able to make a quick move. I'm enjoying it now that the winter's over finally. If anybody knows, I moved here the day before it was minus 50 degrees and 2 feet of snow. So, quick few dishes. Few of you actually ate it today. Is the bourbon bacon glaze. Then it has a side of bacon as well for topping. If you don't know though, the best way to do it, I showed Rich last night. You open a popover and you put that bacon sauce in the popover.
Can you prepare that for Ron? He hasn't had one.
Don't mind my hands. We're gonna put this right in here. Fills the cavity real nice.
Wow.
Oh, the bacon? Yeah, I'll cut the bacon.
On a sandwich, got the bacon.
Eat that first, and then try that puppy out. Oh, vapors down. Perfect. It's pretty good. Try that piece of bacon. So, when I came out here, one of my reasons was to that me and Vito had talked is to bring the East Coast flair to the Midwest, I guess you could say, using a lot of the local Wisconsin products that you guys have, obviously cheese and butter and dairy. We have the Nordic Creamery is about 3.5-4 hours from here. My sous chef James drove around all of Wisconsin one day until he found this butter. And it's probably the best butter you'll ever have in your life. It's a sea salt butter. We also have with us the lobster cream corn, the reason why I got hired. I made this dish when I did a tasting for TJ. All of our steaks are dry aged. They're through a company called Buckhead, who is through Cisco, is their company. Actually, one of the Cisco guys is here. Hey, Ken. So all of our meat's dry aged. I deal with the guy that runs that every day if I have to. They give us the top quality of, if I have any problems, I get on the horn right away and it's solved within minutes. You have the dry aged ribeye, 30-day dry aged ribeye, and this is actually a 30-day dry aged bone-in filet. You had that last night, Rich. This is a new one for you guys to try. Brought out the famous cream spinach. No potatoes, but if you want some potatoes, we can.
You talk about desserts that are coming for Ron.
Oh yeah, we got desserts for Ron.
There he goes.
There
he goes again. I'm the only one in the state of Wisconsin that likes dessert.
I don't know. I heard a story from Vito that he walked into Vito's house one day, went into the freezer and grabbed a pint of Ben & Jerry's or something, Haagen-Dazs, ate that, went back into the freezer, grabbed another one and ate that within 5-10 minutes.
That's because I don't keep that at my house because I know I'll eat more than one. Okay.
But I do have a good dessert for you guys. I'm going to go grab Samantha, our pastry chef. She's got a dessert for you.
Awesome.
All right? Thanks, guys.
Awesome. How's that?
So we're going to have to
Now what do we do?
chew and talk. Oh, wait a sec. Okay, everybody get the rolls out and throw them at this guy. Oh, my God.
How you doing, my friend?
Very good to see you.
Good to see you. How you doing?
Mr. Bear?
Remember,
Okay, everybody.
I'm in the trenches here, guys. I'm in the trenches.
All right, well, we just became baseball players. Get your rolls ready.
See? This club does not discriminate.
That's right.
Matter of fact, this gentleman's first game was in Soldiers Field.
That is true, and I got to tell that story.
Hampton beat the heck out of him.
No, he didn't. because he played Randall McDaniel the week before, and I had him the second. And I tell you what,
Wait,
well,
wait,
if you
wait.
look at
Is
Ron's,
there only one Super Bowl that the Bears ever won? Are we still talking about 1985?
yeah,
You wouldn't even have a team up here.
Are we still talking about 1985? Spoken like a true Bear fan.
you know, if you look at that photo, I'm not sure who may or may not have a photo of Ron. He's actually pulling and trapping the refrigerator. Yeah, when you look there, you'll see 72, the fridge in there. And when he talks about that 85 game I played him, what happened was I was on the kick. When you're a rookie, your goal as a football player is to get on special teams, okay? You want to be a productive player and try to get on special teams. Well, I was on special teams my rookie year, and I was the kickoff return team captain. So William Perry, the fridge, had just scored the touchdown against us on Monday Night Football, and it was embarrassing to Forrest Gregg. So what happened was I come over to the sidelines, and I asked Coach Gregg, who ran special teams, Coach, what type of return do you want? Because the options are full wedge straight or return left or right. And he goes, okay, so if you watch kickoff covers in football, you have a kicker, and you have these two guys next to him. They're usually the fastest guys on the team that fly downfield. They're about 180 to 220 pounds. They're not 340 pounds like the fridge. Ditka put the fridge there. So when we do a full wedge straight, we got to block the fridge. So I come over, and I ask him, what do you want? And he goes, I want a full wedge straight, and I want you to cut that fat. Now, we have some young kids here.
Rich, podcasts, you got all the liberty
Well,
to
we have kids
slice
here,
it
too.
up.
We have kids here, though.
All right, you could say the
And there were
F-bomb.
very, very descriptive words of what he wanted. And I said, Coach, I can't cut him, and that's a penalty. He goes, I don't give a shit. And his eyebrows are twitching. And he's like, cut his ass. And I'm telling you, so we went out there, and luckily, we a diversion, because he is a big guy, but Forrest, that's where the real rivalry started. And then that's after that, Forrest put a highlight tape together of all the cheap shots, because they picked up Lynn Dickey, crushed him, and that's how Charlie Martin ended up going after McMahon. And the rival, it seemed like it softened over the years, but there was a lot of animosity between those two, huh?
I got to see if this is another Forrest Gregg special teams story that you can probably really appreciate. Rich,
Can you keep talking for a while so I can keep eating?
Now you remember when we went out and played the Rams?
Yes.
We went out to play the Rams, and I got to think, was it Ron Brown?
Yeah, Ronald Brown, yep.
Yeah, Ron Brown, one of the fastest guys in the NFL. And just let me back it up. I didn't want to be on special teams, so I tried to get as many holding calls as I could when I was on special teams, so I wouldn't be on special teams. Anyway, we're out playing the Rams, and opening kickoff, we're kicking off to the Rams, and everyone knows Ron Brown has already scored like 3 touchdowns already that season on special teams, on kickoffs. So Forrest Gregg, in his Forrest Gregg twitchy eyebrow way, just says, you kick that ball to Ron Brown. He said, we're going to show people how to cover Ron Brown. They kick it to Ron Brown, touchdown. Okay? So we go in on offense, and we might have scored a PAT or a field goal or something, whatever. So now we're kicking off again. Forrest comes into the huddle. You kick that son of a to Ron Brown, and you guys don't cover, none of you are going to be here Monday. They kick it to Ron Brown, touchdown.
He changed at halftime finally.
Yeah.
It
So
was
we come out, we came out at halftime, and we're kicking off. He lines up the special teams. He looks at everybody. He goes, kick it out of bounds. But that was Forrest. He wanted it his way or no way.
I hate to interrupt you because I kind of enjoy eating while you're talking. However, we're going to kind of speed up and introduce Sam, who is runs all the desserts here, and she did a custom dessert
Perfect.
for Ron.
What do you got there? A little cheese head?
Yes. So,
Okay, you gotta explain to me what this is now.
Okay, so Vito asked me to make a special Packers dessert for you. So it's shaped like a cheese head, and then has both of your numbers on it. So it's a vanilla cake with a mint and lemon filling.
Perfect.
Yes.
See, this is for Rich too, because his number's on here. So it's not only me, just so you know. Well, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, let's cut into this thing. There you go.
Let's put that little sliver on here, Ronnie. There you go.
Hey, Rich.
I need my homogenized milk for this.
Hey, Rich. As you guys are delicately going through 5 steaks, 3 sides, and a 2-pound cake,
Wow.
we're going to segue to the TJ projects that are going on in Oshkosh, and then we're going to take it to the question and answer session. How's that sound?
That's perfect.
So what happened is I went up to the Pleasanton, and Vito's told me that his boss happened to be a cheesehead and a huge Packer fan, and he happened to be from Oshkosh. And so he invited me to dinner, and we went to dinner, and we just sat there and talked about him and football and just life. And it was about a 4-hour meal because no lulls with him either. And so what happened is kind of affinity, and he went to a game with Vito, and our old line mate was James Campen. He was the offensive coordinator. Oh, well, he was actually the line coach. He went to the Browns. So James actually helped him get on the field for a game, and then we just kind of became friends. But what I found interesting is how intense is from me and him. It just seemed like he radiated family, friends, and memories, and he wanted to develop. And, you know, obviously, I'm not sure if you're aware, the guy started Cypress Computers, and then he did pretty well, okay? He got a lot more than first-round draft pick money and more than Rodgers, okay? Okay, so, but he was investing into the community and not just with the golf course, but also with the restaurant that Vito was in, and Tied In Food invited us to come up here. And it's just, that was my experience of meeting him. And I don't know if you know his background, but he seems really engaged into, you know, having the best for where he grew up, and kind of, as you know, you always want to, if you don't live where you grew up, you always have an affinity, and it seems like that gentleman does. And that's kind of my history of kind of how we're in Oshkosh. We hope to come back here a lot more too.
All right, we're gonna move on to a little question and answer session, and I kind of trolled the audience and picked some great people to talk and ask questions to both Rich and Ron.
What about the qualifications for the questions? As we wanted.
Oh yeah.
I believe the Chicago Bear here had a question, so we were going to make sure that he put the helmet on. So is there any chance we can get you to wear the helmet for the question that you have for the audience, for Ron and I? Yeah. No, look, it's de-germed. It's been 25 to 30 years since it's been worn. Well, that's what they contacted us, and they want you to wear it, so they have another reason. All right. Okay, all right. We respect you too. We were just kidding. I got you. Okay.
All right, Rich.
They love you here.
I love you. Here we go. We got our first question with the helmet on right there. There
Ron,
you go.
Ron,
There you go. Look.
Ron, we got Linda Ambroso here.
Okay, Linda.
Rich, you've already met her on the phone
Yes,
multiple
yes.
times. I work with Linda. And Linda,
Look at that. Here we go.
Linda, she suited up.
There you go.
I left your gloves up there. They're really nasty.
Yeah.
That's really bad. The helmet's tough as it is,
Yeah.
I'm going to give the mic over to Linda.
Go ahead. There you go.
Well, Ron, I was supposed to ask about the locker room experience next to Rich, but you already touched on that there was a little bit of a conflict there. So
No, there's a big conflict with the way he was, but that's okay. Look at the helmet.
yeah.
My
I
ex-wife
said
says that,
heavier
too.
than I thought. But what was your favorite away game? Which team did you look forward to playing?
Can you say that again?
What was our favorite away game?
game.
My favorite away game is hands down going to Chicago, going to Harry Carey's. They had a big peppercorn New York strip steak with pasta and a huge knife like this, and then just waking up at 7:30, having a pot of coffee, coming to the room, open up the drapes, looking out on the water, and knowing you're going to battle in Lambeau Field. I mean, in Chicago. That was a favorite away game. My favorite home games were always Lambeau, and that I would always, creature of habit, I'd wake up, go down to the church, go down there at 7:30 Mass, and, ask God, thank you for letting me be here, but also, to not have any judgment toward me as I use all of the aggressiveness I have in my life for the next 3 hours. Okay? So, but it was, those two places were kind of special and everlasting. So hopefully that answers your questions there.
Rich, we got guest number 2, Mr.
Okay.
Martin. He's a great guy. And Mr. Martin, I don't know, this helmet might be a little tough to get on.
Yeah.
This is kind
There's
of
two
a
of you.
personal question.
It's okay.
So you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But you brought up that Daniels with $8.5 million. What did you make in your first year with the Packers?
But that actually, it's all public information, so it's not a big deal. But I'll tell you, and this is something we probably could have touched on. I was a first-round draft pick. I was number 22 in the first round. My total contract when I signed it, and I actually was making, I was in probably the top 10% of the players, offensive linemen, that year. Okay, with my contract, I was making more than any of the players that were offensive linemen that were on Green Bay. My total contract was a 4-year with an option. And when they say 4-year with an option, that just means the team has an option to cut you in that 5th year, basically. It was a 4-year with an option, okay? I had a $210,000 signing bonus. That was my signing bonus, which was big money back. It's 1982.
He was first rounder, though.
Interest rates were 18%. I don't know if you remember that, but anyway, my total contract was worth $750,000 over 5 years, okay? Now, I got to put a little caveat in there, okay? This is 1982. We went on strike in 1982. So we only played 8 games that year, and you're paid by the game you played, okay? So my first year salary was $75,000, okay? I made $37,500 because we only played half the season. Now, we were back in the Carter era, okay? Everything was 50% tax bracket. So I remind my kids this. I made like $17,500 my first year in the NFL.
Hey, Rich, I'm going to work over to a couple guys here that I think is going to don the helmet. He
Sure,
has
there
no
you go.
problem.
All
He has
right,
no
all
problem
right.
putting that bad boy on.
Right on.
Oh, first off, can we get another fuzzy navel for the Bears fan?
There we go. There we go. You can get him overserved.
All right. I was a huge Randall Cobb fan for many years. I get he got old, he lost a step, he's gone, he's a cowboy. How concerned are you that we do not have a solid number 2 receiver?
I don't know. We've done a good job of getting people to evolve in training camp and guys to come forward. I'm with you too. I was a Cobb fan. The injuries caught up with him, and that's what do you do? I was a Jordy fan. You knew when the ball got thrown to him, he was going to catch it. But I also understand the other side of it. I know why they make the decisions they make. The Daniels decision, I know why they're making that decision. The game has just changed. You can't just love a guy and think he's going to be there his whole career.
Oh, I get
You know,
that, but is
you
it
know.
going to be Davis? Is it Allison?
But
Is it
yeah,
Brown?
I think somebody's got to step
Scantling.
up. Yeah, somebody's got to step up in this training camp and make a statement. You look at what we've been trying to do with tight ends for the last 4 years.
Yeah, Jimmy
you know,
Graham.
You know, we still haven't answered that.
No, not
You
since
know,
Finley.
we don't have that seam guy. You know, you remember Finley going down on the seam.
Finley was the best we ever had.
Which opens up everything else, you know, underneath. It opens that hole underneath when you have a seam. So I think there's a lot of questions in this training camp. You know, I think the big answers are a lot of guys got paid money, you know, but there's a lot of questions got to be answered. We need a tight end to step forward and do something.
Hey, Rich, we're going to go to question guess number 4.
Okay.
This might be a little issue, but what was the rule we talked about heading over from the West Coast? No question, no helmet, no question?
Well, I suggested it, Vito. You know, I mean, it's up to you. He might be a germaphobe. Okay,
I'm not a germaphobe.
That's a clean helmet.
All right, I have 2 questions. The
Yeah,
first
go ahead,
question
go
is
ahead.
for Ron. Growing up in Chicago and being a huge Bears fan and moving to the state of Wisconsin in January of '85, who was the toughest defensive lineman you had to face from the Chicago Bears?
Well,
Wow.
you know,
I know what the answer
that's
is.
a tough question. I mean, McMichael, obviously, because I played against him the most. But, you know, when we talk about our 85 Bears, that was probably, you know, the best defense, you know, that you've probably ever seen in the NFL. They had 11 guys that played as one, you know, and that's what you want on a Super Bowl run. 11 guys playing as one, and every one of them complemented the other one. You know, if there was something that one did, the other one did that. You know, I mean, they all played in sync. And Rich will tell you, it didn't matter who lined up over you. You had a day full. You know, there wasn't any time off. Of course, my thing is always this. You know, I can play 68 plays as an offensive lineman and kick my guy's ass the whole game and give up 1 sack. I had a bad day. Defensive lineman can get his ass kicked 67 times and have 1 sack, and he had a great game. So
And he has 10 of those. He's going to the Pro Bowl.
yeah. So probably, you know, again, probably Steve McMichael, because I had a lot of battles with him. Tough guy, great player. But Howie Long was probably one of the toughest athletes I ever played against. Howie Long was about a foot taller than Steve McMichael. Howie was a big, strong athlete, and he brought the game. So
Okay.
No, I cut him off.
Oh, God.
I'm done with it. I'm done.
Any other-
I'm
go
moving
ahead.
on to a Packer
Sure,
fan.
go ahead.
All right, it's Mrs. Sell over here,
Okay.
and let's see if she could don the helmet. She's not a
There we
germ.
go.
She is not
there
a
you go.
germaphobe.
All right, there we go.
All right, so this is question 5.
There you
Would
go.
you believe?
As a teammate, tell us about Brett Favre on and off the field. And also, if you were still playing, would you rather play for Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, that's an easy question. No, I'm not put on the spot. That doesn't bother me at all. I'll answer backward, be Brett Favre. The reason, not because of numbers, because, you know, I have a lot of parents that talk to you about their kids playing and going, and what I liked about him is he wasn't just a legend. He wasn't a legend in his own mind, but he literally resonated the essence of sports and the enjoyment of it. And it wasn't about him, and he didn't put you on the spot. And that's what was just amazing to watch this. I just got my last couple years with him, but that's what I liked. I mean, you know, you could Google it, how I went to high school with the Maddens, and we were good friends, so I'd see John in the off-season. He asked me, hey, tell me about Brett. And, you know, they started the off-season program in 1992. We just traded for him, been there 4 days. We're in a tavern called McSwiggin's. They're a group of guys at a bachelor party, and they got a little overserved, I think, and tried to get aggressive with me. And I feel I could take care of myself, even without Ronnie. And next thing you know, Brett flies over my shoulder, tells the guy to get away from his lineman, and, you know, basically backed me up. And I'm like, hey, thanks. We had a few more beverages, and the next day I thanked him, and he's like, what'd I do? You know, nice break in the night for him, I guess, okay? But he was just this, he is no different than what you see, smiling, having fun, so that's an easy question. It isn't about stats and stuff like that. It's just, I played with him, and it'd probably be the other way if I played with Aaron, if that makes any sense. Did I dance around that? Okay.
No, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you.
I want to give my opinion though, and actually, it's similar to Rich's. With Aaron, you've got phenomenal athlete, phenomenal skills. He's in a different era of football. Okay, Brett was just coming into that era. Aaron's in a different era right now. Okay, it's a lot easier to stat up now than it is when Brett was first coming in. You know, which really takes away from the quarterbacks before that. You know, so when you look at it from a stat position of who was better, what was better, there was a lot of guys that were a lot better than these guys if they would have gotten the chance to play at the game today. You know, the game has changed dramatically. That's the first thing you have to understand. Fans don't like to hear that, you know, because they want their favorites and they want their, you know, who's the best. Two phenomenal quarterbacks, one's in the Hall of Fame, one's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But Rich hit it right on the head. Brett's the real deal. I mean, even with all his negatives, that guy's the real deal. Even I just saw, you know, the things that pop up on Twitter and Facebook and things. There's an old interview with Brett from 2 years after playing in the league for Green Bay, for Mike Holmgren. He's telling a joke, and you can Google this. He's talking about not knowing what a nickel defense is, and he's telling the story.
Can you explain to him what a nickel defense is?
He actually had to have Ty Detmer 2 years after he was starting. He had to have Ty Detmer tell him what a nickel defense was. Okay, a nickel is the linebacker comes out, D-back comes in.
So usually you have 4 DBs and you had the fifth is a nickel.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal if a corner, it's like saying, Ron, do you know what a helmet is?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what a nickel is, especially if you're a corner, a quarterback. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's funny because you knew the guy was sincere and he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
But the reality was, he didn't care. He was playing football.
Yeah, that's
he
exactly.
didn't care what a nickel defense was because he looked at 11 guys that were out there, you know, and that's what he was playing against. It didn't matter if it was a linebacker replaced by a D-back or whatever. He was playing against 11 guys, and that's how he played the game. Okay, he wasn't a stat guy. He wasn't there trying to, you know, come up with the most ingenious play in the world. You've seen him play. You saw some of the throws he's had, just goofy, dumb stuff that you go, how'd that happen? You know, how'd that work? And you saw the interceptions too. I mean, you got what you got what you paid for. But you know, the guy took you to 2 Super Bowls. He won 1. You know, you can't ask for much more.
And good times or bad, the guy was smiling.
Yeah.
I mean, one story that I always think about is we were playing. He started off in a bang. We're playing the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City, and he'd thrown an interception the week before, and I missed the tackle. And I go, okay, if I get another interception, I'm going to keep my head up. I'm going to break down. So we play Kansas City, and I end up having 2 unassisted tackles. Okay, and Brett threw them. So we're in back of the plane. We're coming home, and we're not reading the stat sheets. Okay, Brett's reading the stat sheets. Hey, Rich, you had 2 unassisted tackles. I'm like, I know, Brett. If I keep blocking for you, I'm going to lead the team in tackles. Well, next thing you know, he's firing rolls at me. You know what I mean? And he was just fun.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really important for youth these days, and is to go, whether your kid doesn't go on, is to have fun with your teammates, whatever their role is, whether they're the best or the star, and then it will play out, and they create family, friends, and memories, which is my experience in coming back here with the food, the game, and my friends, and I'm just fortunate and blessed to be here, and I'm glad everybody came out here for today, too. But
Hey, well, guess what? We're wrapping this party up here. I think we, as a group, you guys did awesome. I really appreciate it, Rich.
This has been fun.
Thank you.
Thank
I appreciate
You
everybody
guys-
coming
you
out.
guys-
Yeah.
And
I-
thank TJ. He's the one that put the whole thing on. He's the one that's paying for the party. So
The one thing I have learned today, I just got a new friend. It's Ron Holstrom. He's a super guy, and thank you, Ron. Thank you.
I've been up in Minocqua, Wisconsin for the last 30 years. So with all those Bear fans, where is he? There you go. yeah. Thanks everybody for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you.